All right, guys, what is going on? Welcome into another episode of the Full Press Saints podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at SaintsFPC. Alec and Dayton here today. It's been a hot minute. We're not going to lie to you. It's been a hot minute since we've been able to hop on with all the, I live in Texas, so I'm sure if you guys have seen the news this past week or so, we're not used to this down here for sure. So
it's like we went to another dimension. It's like Stranger Things happened on on planet Earth right here.
It's like, man, I don't know how to describe it. The week we've had down here was ridiculous. Power outages, an ungodly amount of snow that I've never seen in my life. Now since the Super Bowl when it was here in Arlington 10 years ago. Yeah, it was crazy. Nonetheless, we're here, we're safe, we're well. I hope everybody else is the same as they're listening today on this beautiful, what's today, Monday morning. So we got a lot of great stuff lined up for you guys today, as well as some cool things that came out this past couple of weeks. So we'll tease that for a little bit, guys. So if you guys have not listened to our latest interview with Kevin KT Turner of The Athletic, he came on, talked to us last week about the Saints, Chris Richard, the hiring, what it means. Some of his favorite draft prospects, and he gave us a little tease on where he thinks Drew Brees ranks among the greats in the history of this great game. So that was fun to have him on talk. Let's make sure you guys listen to that if you guys haven't yet. Dayton had a really good article come out last week. I'll let you talk about that for a second, Dayton.
Yeah, and I actually obviously will be having some more in the works, and of course, can't forget about Alex. Quarterback situation for the Saints this offseason article that also just came out, this most recent one on our website. So be sure to check that out. But mine was also another little offseason preview piece for the Saints. What's next for the Saints after yet another disappointing end to a season? And it essentially goes over what we're going to kind of talk about in this episode. Coaching changes, which we've actually already gone over in a past episode, and I know you talked about with Kevin Turner in the latest Saints FPC podcast episode as well. First time since, looking back on it, first time since 2016, about 2017 maybe, that this many coaches have departed and been replaced. Lucky for the Saints, though, we've kept the same OC and DC for a while now, and that has been big part of the reason why the team has been so consistent. But getting some minor coaching changes, and it's good because these coaches are getting promotions like Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn. They deserve it, and they're getting it. So, a little shakeup for the Saints I think is good. I also went over the potential cap hell for the Saints, as well as the possible draft picks and scenarios, which we will talk about plenty. But, if you just want a little peek into what possibly may happen with the Saints this offseason or what will happen with them, be sure to check out that article, fullpresscoverage.com. Just search Saints and you'll check us out, or you can follow us on Twitter at SaintsFPC, and we tweet out all the podcast and article links multiple times. So be sure to check that out and follow us. We've been following back. A majority of the people follow us, so Give us a follow.
There we go. As you mentioned, Dave, a lot of coaching changes have happened with the Saints. Of course, we know Dan Campbell left to Detroit to be the new head coach, took Aaron Glenn with him to be his DC. Joe Lombardi, quarterback coach, left to go join the Chargers to be their new OC. Good for him. Hope it works out this time for him. The Saints, kind of a surprise here. I didn't expect this. They added Zach Strief as an offensive line assistant under Sean Payton, and now there's ramblings, according to Jeff Duncan, that the offensive line coach, Dan Rocher, will be the new tight end coach / running game coordinator. Also from Nick Underhill, they're expected to make the Chris Richard hire official, matter of days, as well as they're going to promote Curry to the quarterbacks coach. So a lot of moving parts, but like you said, the stability of Sean Payton, Pete Carmichael, Dennis Allen, those three, it's been stable for a good while as far as the big three are concerned. So should be really fun to see where all these guys go. And of course, we haven't been on since the Super Bowl, which is crazy.
Yep.
So, look, the Bucks. Look, you have to get Tampa Bay credit and respect here, right? Look at the gauntlet they went through of quarterbacks. To go through Breeze, Rodgers on the road, I might add, and then to go and really beat down the Chiefs in every aspect of that game. You got to give some respect to the Bucks and Tom Brady. They really through all the odds, I think this is Brady's most impressive win.
Yeah,
but
I mean, hats off to the Bucs here. I mean, as much as we don't want to give them credit since they're division rivals, they beat us in the playoffs, and it stung really bad. And none of us, I mean, a majority of us, I think all of us Saints fans, but a majority of us, I should say, just in case people listening who might root for Tom, we don't want to see him win another Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, we're tired of it.
But a lot of people also didn't want to see Kansas City repeat, and you didn't get that, so I hope you're happy. But I would have loved to see Mahomes take another win, especially over Tom Brady, just cementing his legend status already in his young career. But, I mean, Kansas City, man, when you have Patrick Mahomes, he's a fantastic quarterback, but even somebody like Patrick Mahomes needs some sort of protection.
Yep.
And you can't just blame the injuries either. The Chiefs did not adjust accordingly at all. There were no halftime adjustments to help out Mahomes. They were still in the game throughout a majority of it. And that Bucs defense and lots of drops. Oh, that absolutely, yeah. I mean, Mahomes was able to roll out, make these ridiculously crazy passes, including one where he's pretty much floating on the ground, and it's a 30-yard dead accurate pass, and it's just dropped. So that was really frustrating to watch, especially somebody who the last thing we wanted to see was the Bucs take home Super Bowl championship. Of course, the Saints since 20 I think 14 or 13 maybe, they have the best record, maybe just 2015. They have the best record out of any of the teams in the NFC South, and they have 4 straight division titles. They're the only team in this division to not be in the Super Bowl since like 2014. And it is sad. It's a very sad. We haven't even made it to the Super Bowl in that stretch of time. So it's very frustrating to see a division rival just waltz in and win. And doing the same exact formula the Saints have been doing for the last 4 years. You get an older quarterback, surround him with a fantastic roster, and just run with it. Try to keep things the same. And the Bucs did it in year 1. So, I mean, credit to them. Like you said, very tough schedule they had, and they won. Their defense stepped up when they need to, and yeah, credit to them. I mean, they won fair and square. So
I just feel like, have you watched WandaVision at all, Dayton?
I have not. No.
No. Well, there's basically, spoiler alert, people. If you guys have not, skip over this right now. But
I heard it's a great show.
It is a great show. But the last 4 playoff trips for the Saints reminds me of the latest bit from WandaVision where the villain is revealed, and they do a little catchy song, like it was Agatha all along, and she like makes all these bad things happen throughout the show. She's been doing this to the Saints the last 4 years, I'm pretty sure. Minnesota, yep. The no call, Minnesota again, and then Jared Cook. So
that's going to be the Jared Cook game now. Yep. Yeah. Especially because he's probably going to be on the team.
Oh, no, he should.
This year. So we can absolutely just call it the Jared Cook game. And not even
we can say he's the reason we lost comfortably.
Yes. There we go.
It's just crazy.
Got to blame somebody.
It's crazy to see how Tampa, is the Super Bowl champs, and yet through the entire postseason, we were the one team to not only have a lead over Tampa, but at one point in that game, we had Tampa's number.
Yes.
And then it all changed in a heartbeat.
Yep.
So
I think it's funny. The further the Bucs got in the playoffs, it seems like the better they got and the lesser competitive the games were. Because even against Washington, I mean, that game was kind of coming down to the wire against Tyler Heineke, a quarterback off the streets who, is an absolute stud now that we know. The Saints were in the game, if not ahead, for a majority of it, and then after that Jared Cook fumble, everything went down. The Packers were kind of competitive, but you could tell that the Bucs came out. I mean, they scored on their first drive and just drove down the field, and you could tell that was going to be kind of the game. And then 31-9 Super Bowl victory. I mean, it was just crazy. They persevered through a lot, but Saints gave them the best, if not the second best game of the entire playoffs, and that should have been the NFC Championship game.
Yep. Nonetheless, here we are talking about the Saints offseason. Let's dive right into it here, Dave. First, let's take a look at some of these key in-house guys the Saints are going to have to try and bring back. Obviously, the 2 big names, Marcus Williams, Trey Hendrickson, are probably the 2 biggest names on the market for the Saints. So besides those 2 guys, some other guys are interested in seeing if they decide to let them walk or if they try and bring these guys back.
Yeah, it's crazy how many free agents the Saints have. And it's also crazy the amount of people they need to either restructure contracts or, cut So this team is going to be a lot different than, was last year. And granted, every year a team has some sort of changes, but like I've said, over the last 4 years, the Saints have kept so many things consistent. The core roster has been the same, but now that guys like, Trey Hendrickson, Sheldon Rankins have kind of stepped into their own, Alex Anzalone, Marcus Williams, they're all going to be free agents. And the Saints are also going to have to look to cut guys like Janoris Jenkins, maybe Quan Alexander, who they got a year ago, restructure some contracts. So this team is going to look very different. And for the Saints, too, they're losing a lot of defensive backs. I think it's 4 corners and 3 safeties are hitting the free agent market, including Justin Hardy, who's one of the best special teams players in the entire NFL. Mm-hmm. So hopefully he's a guy that the Saints can retain. Those situations tend to be a little hit or miss. Either the guy is going to definitely want to come back with the team. Hardy seems like a stand-up guy, and he might want to, but also, the Saints aren't going to be able to give him as much money as I'm sure some teams will be able to as well. And I mean, he's also a cornerback. So, I mean, it's not like he just provides depth on special teams. He can also be a cornerback depth guy, even though he didn't play it very much for the Saints. That's a guy I would love to get back. Obviously, Sheldon Rankins, I would love to get him back. Really, the only guys that are pending free agents for the Saints that I do not want back or wouldn't care if we didn't re-sign them is Jared Cook, Craig Robertson, only because of his age. I mean, I love Craig Robertson, but I mean, I think his retirement is on the horizon. He's been a great special teams guy as well for us. PJ Williams, and great. I mean, he's been a captain for a majority of his time with the Saints.
And also, think about Craig. People forget about us. When Mark Ingram left a couple years ago, he kind of became that rah-rah, hype man for the Saints. An underrated aspect, I think, is very important in that locker room, considering how much it's changed from the 7 and 9 years to where we're at now.
Yeah. He's 33, so not bad. And do you know what college Craig Robertson went to?
UNT.
Yes,
stud.
Sir.
My
yes,
alum.
Sir.
I mean, we're trash now, but hey.
That's all right.
That's all right. Hey. We're all right.
Yeah. That's but anyway, just because he's 33, and I mean, I don't know. I think the Saints are definitely going to draft a linebacker, so yeah, get younger for sure. PJ Williams, I mean, granted, we're going to need this cornerback depth, especially if we end up cutting Jackrabbit, but I don't know. PJ Williams has just been so hit and miss for me. I know he's made some good plays for us, but there's got to be better out there, right? Yeah, there's got to be better out there.
He is great within the line of scrimmage and maybe 5 yards after that, but look, if you put him one-on-one or in some kind of zone coverage down the field, it almost never works out.
It's crazy. It's crazy to me. Yeah, he's definitely more of a either run support or just a coverage support guy. He really can't do stuff on his own, unfortunately. Other than that, I want all the other guys back. I want Sheldon Rankins back. I would love to have Marcus Williams back. I would love to have get Justin Hardy and Jameis Winston back. I think Winston's going to be the starter come day one. Even if the Saints end up drafting a quarterback in the first round, which I'll get to in just a little bit. But I think Winston's going to be the starter, so I really hope we're able to re-sign him because it sounds like from early reports that a lot of teams are going to be interested in Jameis Winston. So we'll see what that – remember, a lot of teams were interested in Teddy Bridgewater a couple seasons ago. That was the 2019 offseason. Mm-hmm. Almost signed with the Miami Dolphins. They gave him a lot more money than the Saints were, but he decided to come back and stay. I think it was like a 1 year, $8 or $9 million deal. So that could be another thing that happens with Winston. We'll see, though. Alex Anzalone, Trey Hendrickson, of course. I want both of those defensive studs back. But pertaining to Anzalone, he got pushed around a lot in the playoffs against Tampa Bay, against Chicago. He just has not really looked like himself. So, I really wish Quan Alexander would be healthy, but also he's a liability in the run support aspect of the linebacker position he plays. So linebacker's a big question mark. It's Demario Davis is of course the stud there in the middle, and then it's going to be a lot of question marks for the Saints. So I'm interested to see what ends up happening, and Quan Alexander's injury only makes it a lot more interesting. But and if any of those guys leave, it's going to leave. I mean, even if we have to replace them, those are guys who have been on the team for quite a while, most of them, and they've made an impact. So I don't know. I'm sure you're in the same thought process as me, is that even if we retain a couple of these guys, we're going to lose a lot, and that could change the identity of this team a lot. Yeah,
I agree. I think, looking at this list, obviously the only guys who, obviously are not going to be back is, they released Nick Easton before his bonus was due. to free up cap room. Hypothetically, they could do the same thing with Jared Cook, but we'll wait and see how that turns out. March 18th, I believe, is the deadline for his bonus, so we shall wait on that. And of course, Cameron Tom, the center, signed with the Dolphins on a future deal, so he's not going to come back, obviously. But, I mean, looking at this list, I think I would like to bring Rankins back, but I think my only problem is I think last year the Saints already made their decision who they want to keep as their D-tackle 1 going forward, and that's David Onyemata.
For sure.
When they locked him up to a pretty lucrative deal at the time, but then you saw what other DTs were getting paid on the market. John Hargrove from the Eagles last year, he got a pretty big deal, which, it made David look like a steal. So,
yep. Grady Jarrett got a nice contract too.
Yep. So I think, I would like to bring Rankins back, but I feel like, Onyemata's there. You have still a Shy Tuttle. You have Malcolm Roach, who had some flashes this year. You still have Malcolm Brown playing the run pretty well. We'll wait and see what happens with him. He's another guy who could be cut. So, Rankins. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. No, I was just going to say, and Rankins was just such an important part of getting this rush defense to a top 5 in the NFL. But like you're saying, the Saints already do have depth, and they already have guys who have been there and kind of know the program and whatnot. So losing Rankins wouldn't be too bad, especially if he costs a pretty penny. Then the Saints shouldn't risk affording him. But man, I would love to see him back. But you're right. Onyemata is the DT1. Yeah, and they've made that pretty clear.
And I think with Anzalone also, it's just. I know the Saints love to use, whether it's 3 safeties or the nickel package with Johnson Gardner-Johnson that can move around a lot. I know it works a lot, but at the same time, I feel like it's just because the Saints cannot afford to play 3 down linebackers. Right. They really can't. Because we saw last year, starting off with Caden Ellis and Anzalone opposite Demario Davis, it just did not work out. It did not look good at all. Anzalone, I feel like we could easily upgrade over a guy like him in free agency. I wouldn't mind bringing him back on a cheap deal to play special teams and be a core backup player. Kind of be the next Craig Robinson, if you will. A backup and a guy who can, play in a pinch, good at special teams, good guy in the locker room to have. That would make sense. I would not even be opposed to bringing Craig back just because of the uncertainty at the position entering free agency.
Luckily, too, we got Zach Bond as well, and his development is still TBD. So
questionable at best. We shall see what happens with him. Another guy, real quick, James Hurst, the backup tackle. Was a quality starter beforehand, but then got suspended. So he came in late this year. Also, keep in mind, 2021 is Armstead's last year of his current deal. So, we know that this was Armstead's best year by far. He was healthy the entire year. Played at a really high level, but you never really know because he has the history. But I would like to bring Hurst back. Michael Burton, also the fullback, he played really well, I thought. And I think, the Saints to me are one of those rare teams that still employ a fullback. I mean, most of the time it's, a flex tight end that specifically blocks, but they still have a hand on the ground, up the middle power fullback. So I would love to bring Michael Burton back, and he was on with Chris and Adar, and basically said the same thing. He wants to be back here in this locker room. He loves the environment the Saints have. I'd love to bring him back. Hardy to me makes a lot of sense to bring back. And Winston, obviously, we got to see what happens with Breeze. Breeze is the first big domino to fall in this offseason. We saw he basically took his deal down to vet minimum, so we'll see what happens. Really quick, let me ask you this then. You pick one. Pick one to bring back, right? Marcus Williams, Trey Hendrickson. Where are you going to go?
Oh,
because I go Marcus all day.
Yeah,
I go Marcus all day.
I mean, that's actually really tough. I mean, I think Marcus is going to cost us less money, or at least I'm hoping he will.
The safety market really is that big to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, Hendrickson is just coming off such a good year, but I mean, also he's banged up pretty often, and Marcus Williams is always healthy. And then you look at the draft. We have Marcus Davenport for a reason, right? Should be this whole time. It should be Davenport and Cameron Jordan starting opposite each other. Unfortunately, Davenport has dealt with injuries, and he just has not has not been what we were expecting him to be. He's a 6'7" monster, and he still is unable to have proper footwork to get to the quarterback or properly help in run support a lot of the time. So it's tough. And this draft, you have a lot more safety depth than DN depth, just based off of kind of what I've been looking over. Of course, pro days are still coming up, and we'll see how draft boards come out after that. But man, that's really tough. Yeah, I mean, I obviously would rather have Marcus Williams than Trey Hendrickson overall, but it's tough because I think it's going to be easier to replace Marcus Williams than it will to replace Trey Hendrickson. But hey, we got Davenport for a reason, like I said. So yeah, I guess if I had to choose, go for it.
I was gonna say he was a first round pick for a reason, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, 2 firsts. Pretty much.
That's what they call him on the streets.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I'd go Williams. I mean, he's one of the better, coverage free safeties in the entire NFL. Hendrickson, was just able to get to quarterbacks really well, and
who knows if it's a 1 year thing.
You can always find that. Exactly, too. Yeah, exactly. Could have just been
because you could probably credit Cam Jordan's down year to being double teamed, and as much more often than he's used to. So
yeah,
what is it fair to? Is it totally fair to say that Trey Hendrickson benefited from Jordan being double teamed so much, and that's why he broke out? Sure,
right.
Was it a complete fluke? It could be. We really just don't know.
Right. Exactly,
so
yeah.
I think, and the thing with Marcus Williams, people, it's kind of crazy the days of the Ed Reeds and the Palomalus, where they're just true ball hog, go get the ball safeties.
Yeah,
it's not a thing anymore.
No,
it's corners. It's corners, corners and the hybrids who make the plays, but there's not really a true coverage. Put me in the backfield, let me just go follow the ball type safety, and that's what Marcus Williams is, and that's what he was coming out of Utah. So,
which is funny because this is the era of quarterbacks and throwing and passing crazy offenses, and yeah, you're right. It's more of hybrid. Put me in the box safeties. We'll have one, maybe 2, guys kind of roaming. But yeah, no, there's not too many true ball hawk safeties left in this league. Yeah.
Seattle traded 2 firsts for a box safety. Let that sink in.
Yes, exactly.
Not worth it. I think we're on the same. But this is a pro Marcus Williams podcast, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
We said this on the old Section 600 podcast. Me, Ross, Tyler, we all said this is a pro Marcus. I'm carrying that over here. We are pro Marcus Williams all day, every day. So I think Marcus would be the guy I would like to bring back. We shall wait and see, though. And of course, with Jameis, like we said, look, it's all if Breeze comes back, do you see Jameis coming back? Like what Teddy did? It'd be hard. I don't know how you afford both.
I haven't even thought about Breeze coming back, to be completely honest.
It's kind of great. It's kind because there's been no word yet.
No, you're right.
Earlier, everyone was like, the camps were saying, "Oh, he's going to retire."
Yeah,
but at the same time, it would happen by now. You would think, right?
I think he would have made his. Yeah,
he would have. He would have made the announcement by now, so it's not totally out of the question yet.
I think he's still thinking about it because a lot of times players have already made up their mind, even like before the season. It happens, but with Breeze, he's just
and it's different this year because Breeze took his deal all the way down.
Yes,
he pretty minimum.
Much. You're right. He pretty much just cashed out.
So that's either me saying, okay, Breeze did the Saints a favor and he's not going to screw them over once he's gone, or Breeze is saying, go give me some help. Let's do this one more time. And I really, and there's so much controversy on Saints Twitter, which is, by the way, that's just a mess all on its own.
Yes,
that's a war zone.
It really is.
Let me get your opinion before we take a break here. Let's just talk about this. If Drew Brees were to come back, how would you feel? Totally, brutally, honestly, how would you feel if he came back?
I would be upset. I don't want it. I don't want it at all. His cap hit is $12.25 million right now. Which, because he's got a $5.75 million signing bonus and a $5.4 million restructure bonus, but his actual base salary is a little over $1 million. So, his cap hit went from like almost 30 million to 12. So, he saved us quite a bit of money, which either way, whether he stays or goes, it's beneficial for the team. So I think that he was going to do that regardless.
And keep in mind,
puts us back to square one.
Whether he stays or goes, that cap hit stays the same. It's there.
Yep, exactly.
So whether he's there or not, it's
no
there.
matter what. That's why I'm saying, that the restructure brings us back to square one. Blindfold, mystery. We don't know what he's doing. He's still thinking on it. If he decides to come back, the Saints, what upsets me the most is that the Saints will just welcome him back with open arms. Like, hey, let's come back. I think for his own safety and benefit, he needs to retire. Like, he is not mobile whatsoever at all anymore. Like, remember in 2015, Breeze was able to kind of slide in and out of the pocket, right or left, kind of occasionally kind of scrambled out and did some moves. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that in like 5 seasons now. He's a pure pocket passing quarterback. And he takes a lot of hits. His arm is not strong at all. Like he can still push the ball 15, maybe 20 yards down the field, but that happens once, twice, 3 times tops a game.
And meanwhile, look at Tom Brady, who had 43.
Exactly.
I believe he led the NFL in deep balls.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, and it helps. I've never been the guy of like, the shorter you are, the worse you are. But for like Tom Brady being however tall he is, 6'4", 6'5",
yeah.
And whereas Drew Brees is like 6 foot even, it comes to haunt you when you're older, definitely. And so if Brees decides to come back, I will be upset.
Will you be a Saints fan still?
Oh, absolutely, and I'll still root for him, and I'll still go, go Drew Brees, and I want him to prove me wrong. And I'm sure he wants to prove a lot of doubters wrong right now. But
and we know he's that kind of guy.
Yes,
we know he's like Tom. He's wired like Brady. He's the ultimate competitor. And people still have doubts about him and his career legacy. He's gonna come out and try and prove us all wrong. So
exactly.
I mean, my thing is like, look, and I know you know Brian Bienemy, right, on Twitter.
Yes.
So
yes.
I know he's been out on the Breeze truthers. And let me just say, I'm not a Breeze truther. However, I just want to point out, just even field, right? If Breeze does not get banged up this year and he plays with a clean slate injury-wise, the shoulder, the foot, all that, is it totally fair to say that he plays much better than what we saw in the playoffs? It's a fair question, right?
It's a fair question.
It's a fair question.
My answer is no.
Yeah, like he got up close to
I gotta tell you like a secret. My answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if he stays 100% healthy, it's still his.
And that's a big if too.
It's the rotator cuff. I think his rotator cuff is just not. I don't know if it's not flexible like it used to be. I don't know if it's just completely damaged from the millions. That's the thing. If you include all of his practice passes, dude has got to be up to like millions of passes thrown in his life.
It's a lot of mileage.
Rotator cuff, exactly. That rotator cuff is on its last leg. So,
and not to mention, was it his throwing or not throwing shoulder?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I can't remember
because in San Diego he messed up the throwing shoulder, the rotator cuff.
I think it was his other shoulder then that he ended up
non-throwing shoulder. I believe it right.
Yes.
So,
but
even then, that's still a lot of mileage. Either way, you cut it up.
Breeze could be one of those guys who retires for a year, feels great in the offseason, pulls a Jason Witten, goes to the booth, feels fantastic in the offseason, watches every single Sunday, does games, is up in the booth, seeing it up close and personal, talking to the guys every week, and is like, you know what, I want to come back. And then, signs with a random team like the Raiders or, wherever Breeze may go. Breeze seems like that kind of guy to me. But I'm really hoping he just hangs it up and the Saints are able to just start with a fresh slate. Even if that means the Saints go, 8-8, 9-7 next year with either a project quarterback or somebody like Jameis Winston or Ryan Fitzpatrick or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's fine. We need to get out. We need to just, eventually it has to happen where we need to start again. And you know what? We tried. The Saints really, really tried to get Drew Brees another ring, but obviously the football gods didn't want it to happen, and I shouldn't say a lot of the blame. I'd say 40% of the blame is on Breeze because of his playoff performances against Minnesota. I mean, some of the play calling, of course, is in there, but against Minnesota and the overtime loss, he was a little shaky against the Rams in the game, towards the end of the game at least.
But we know how that game should have turned out.
But we know how that game should have turned out exactly, and there's a lot of ifs attached to it. So, yeah. But I think we said this on like the first or second episode of this podcast. Breeze has been wanting to retire since about 2018.
I never seen that man sling the ball that deep since then.
Right. Exactly. He's hanging on by a thread now.
Yeah, I think my final verdict would be if he comes back, I mean, I'm like, you know what? F it, let's go. But at the same time, I'm like, this offense better not be what it was last year.
For sure.
Because the offense cannot be the same. Because teams basically will copy what Tampa did.
Yep.
And that's going to be play everything shallow, challenges with the deep throw.
Yep.
And he did get some off last year, but I don't think he could do it for 16-plus weeks consecutively. So, And I love it how we talked about all this, but we haven't mentioned Taysom Hill as the quarterback of the future. Just want to point that out. We're not about that, are we?
He's the utility player of the future. That's what he is. We'll keep it that way.
Yes, for sure. So we're taking a quick break, guys. Coming up next, we'll get into how these Saints get out of salary cap hell, some possible restructures, cap casualties, and some even free agent targets. Listening to the Full Press Saints podcast. Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to the Full Press Saints podcast. Alec and Dayton here. Of course, Dayton, as we are well aware, everybody has seemed to make it their business to know about the Saints salary cap. Mm-hmm. So the way it sits right now, I believe the league salary cap is going to be set between 180 million and 185, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing for us.
Yes, very good. I'm actually hearing 188 million.
Yeah, that's even better.
That's what I'm hearing, which is great. Yeah, because originally I think they thought that was going to be $175 million. But then it went up to, then they said it's at least going to be 180. And then I think I saw a tweet the other day that said it's going to be at least 185. And somebody, I think it was Tom, how do you pronounce this? Yes.
From NFL
I think
Network,
he's the one who tweeted that it was going to be $188 million is what they're expecting.
Even better, because it hasn't been said yet officially. So, as it sits right now, the Saints, is it based on last year's salary cap? Is that how this works? Or is it based on the 175?
I'm pretty sure it's based on the 175, but also consider, too, with the Saints, because every team has cap carryover, and the Saints have $4.1 million in cap carryover. Essentially, for those listening that don't know, cap carryover is where the money that was not used in last year's salary cap rolls over into this season. So the Saints will have an extra. So if let's just use $188 million, if that ends up being the salary cap, the Saints cap will actually be $192.1 million. They'll get the extra $4.1 million added onto that, which is any sort of money right now, helps the Saints immensely.
Yep.
So, and I'm guessing for Spot Track is, adjusted salary cap. They're actually going off the 189. So I'm guessing they're going off of having the salary cap be at $185 million plus the 4.1. This is on Spot Track. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Spot Track.
Spot Track. I've never actually said it out loud. That's funny. But I think they're going off the salary cap being $185 million and then adding the $4.1 million onto that. So yeah, the Saints right now estimated cap space is negative $65 million.
Hey, that's better than what we're at because
exactly.
According to Over the Cap, they haven't factored in the 4.4 million. So they set it at negative $69 million. So same thing. It's just
Yep.
So assuming it's based on the 188, which makes sense. Obviously some big guys who are probably going to be asked to restructure, guys like Cam Jordan, Michael Thomas, Teron Armstead, maybe Andres Pete, Demario Davis. If you extend Ramczyk and Lattimore, that helps out a lot too for this year.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe the Saints do the same thing they did with Sheldon Rankins, where they extend them with the 5th-year option, but then add on some void years to spread it out even more, right. Which is something that Mickey and Kyra Lewis excel at. So, this makes a lot of sense, of course. And now, obviously, the how do we say the cap casualties? There are some guys who could be cut. I think you mentioned the big one earlier, Quan Alexander. If the Saints were to release him, they would say, if I believe it's what, 13 mil?
It's $13.2 million, which is ridiculous. Because he has no dead cap hit. If we cut him, it doesn't affect the team at all. So if we keep him, he has a cap hit of $13.2 million, and he's coming off a major injury. So
late in the year.
Late in the year, exactly. So
I'd imagine they cut him and probably bring him back on a much lower deal. But I would certainly welcome Quan Alexander back to this team.
Oh, me too. I wish he didn't get hurt because I'd even take that $13.2 million cap hit if he was completely healthy.
Yeah, if he was healthy, yeah, I'd be fine with the numbers he had right now because I think he's well worth it. But
maybe extend or restructure. I don't know how much he has left on that contract that he had signed with the 49ers. I think there's still a couple years left, but either way, restructure or extend him to save that. But I think because of the injury, yeah, you got to cut him.
Yeah, so, I mean, he makes a lot of sense. Janoris Jenkins, if the Saints were to cut him, it frees up about $7 million in cap.
So there's $20 million right there, cutting two guys. There's $20 million right there. So that's a pretty good start, I'd say.
Some other guys include Nick Eason, who they're to release. Malcolm Brown, you save about $5 million doing that. Manny Sanders only saves you about 4, so we'll see how they decide to adjust. Because I think receiver is going to be a big need in this offseason. People aren't talking about it enough. But especially if Drew Brees is not back, I'm not trusting Jameis Winston to go win games with Juwan Johnson and Tommy Lewis at receiver.
No, me neither.
Because Brees can do that. Yeah. But other guys, I'm not betting. That's a recipe for disaster right there.
Yeah, and it looks like it will save us $6.5 million, but still, that's that. I think I'd rather keep Teron Armstead. Cutting him would save us $7 million, but I don't want to cut him. Like even though that's a lot of money to save, same with Manny Sanders, like $6.5 million. I mean, we need anything that we got. I'd rather keep those guys and just. And
you could easily restructure or extend Teron Armstead to spread out the cap hits. So certainly a lot of moving pieces. As it's taking a lot of work to get this cap, to where it's at. Granted, we haven't seen the official numbers yet, but we shall wait and see on that. So nowadays, let's move over to some free agents, some guys who we think the Saints could bring in, assuming we're on a budget, of course.
Yeah,
because it's not going to be a, take the card, go to Walmart, get whatever you need. This is going to be here's a list: bread, milk, eggs. Keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's take a look at some guys here. Who are some names you think could come to New Orleans and contribute? And the Saints have played that way for a while as far as free agent goes. They are the team that, low end or low risk, high reward type deals. So who are some guys you think stand out to you?
It's really tough to look at this free agent list and, think that any of these guys in the top, 25, 30 even are going to be able to, the Saints are not going to be able to afford a lot of these guys. There's guys like Melvin Ingram, Bud Dupree, Shaq Barrett, Matt Judon, Von Miller, obviously he's a veteran. I don't want the Saints to really sign anybody over the age of 30 in this free agency, or I should say 32. Von Miller's 32, so he's up there. But obviously the Saints kind of have to go younger because they are in, a little bit of a different era starting this season. Mm-hmm. But, if we lose out on a guy like Marcus Williams, or if we lose out on a guy like Alex Anzalone, hopefully we draft to kind of fill that position. But there's also guys like Kyler Fackrell. He's a 30-year-old outside linebacker, just played with the Giants. I think that he would be a decent replacement even for a guy like Craig Robertson. Put him in special teams, have him on the team for a few seasons, have some veteran presence there. There's also guys like Duron Harmon. He's 30, but he would be an okay, kind of support piece. But there's a lot of guys the Saints are not going to be able to. I like Mackenzie Alexander if we end up cutting Janoris Jenkins and losing out on PJ Williams. Mackenzie Alexander, I think, can be signed on a very, very cheap deal. I would enjoy him. There's also Jordan Jenkins from the New York Jets. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's 27 years old. I think that he'd be an interesting linebacker prospect for the Saints. And other than that, there's not really too many people that I think the Saints are going to be able to afford or should really look for. It's going to be drafting, and it's going to be restructuring contracts so that they can get down. But that's the thing. The Saints are going to have to restructure and cut some guys just to get to not be negative on the salary cap. Mm-hmm. And then how are they going to create space to sign some of these guys? So I think the Saints are going to have to
get real creative.
Draft. And also get really creative, yeah. But they could sign a lot of these guys to vet minimums or just really, really cheap 2-year contracts, and I wouldn't be too upset about having some of those guys for depth purposes, but we're not going to be able to get anybody like, A.J. Green or J.J. Watt or Leonard Williams or Quan Short, or like I said, Melvin Ingram, any of those guys, Allen Robinson. I imagine Allen Robinson opposite Michael Thomas.
Nasty.
I guarantee you, if the Saints had, even $15 million in cap space, they'd be able to maneuver something to sign Allen Robinson to a fat contract and
or
have
just
one of the
backload
best
it.
receiving cores. Yeah, absolutely.
Backload
Just
the
backload
deal.
it, right?
Yep.
So I also like AJ Boye. He's a free agent. T.Y. Hilton's a free agent as well. Yannick Ngakoue, he's a free agent. He's only 26, but he's going to probably sign a very fat deal. So yeah, it's tough. I don't think the Saints are going to be able to target any of these guys unless it's a veteran like Kareem Jackson. But I don't want the Saints to sign, old guys like that, or old in terms of NFL playing. And I don't mean to call any of you 32 plus people old, because you're not. But in football terms, you are. So,
a couple of guys I think the Saints could bring in on a low budget. I have a list already prepped out and everything.
Nice.
I think some guys include Keelan Cole from the Jaguars. He's a very nice all-around receiver. Could play, in the slot out. Excellent return man as well. I like Rashard Higgins from the Browns. He, to me, makes a lot of sense. If the Saints were to bring back Jameis and kind of open up the game, I would love for them to bring in David Moore from the Seahawks. He's kind of Russell's big play down the field guy. Zach Pascal from the Colts has always been nasty to me. He's a guy I would love to bring in. Forrest Lamp, the interior lineman for the Chargers. He's a guy who's had a lot of injury history, so I think he could come in on a cheap deal, be a backup lineman for a year or two. Ryan Kerrigan is also a guy I think he would be okay with putting his hand on the ground and replacing Trey Hendrickson in that role. He, to me, a veteran, makes a lot of sense on a cheap deal. If the Saints were to lose Marcus Williams, I think the two perfect candidates to bring in would be Marcus May from the Jets.
I do like him, yes.
Underrated safety. I think he's going to have a whole lot of not a huge payday market. Or if I were to bring Millie Hooker on a 1-year deal, he says we know when he's healthy, he's a baller, but that's the big if. So if he could stay healthy, I like him a lot. The one guy I will say I would actually be okay with dropping, some decent money on if the Saints were in that position. I would love for them to bring in Anthony Walker Jr. from the Colts to pair up with Damari Davis in the middle.
I like that. We need linebacker help.
Yeah, I would love for them to bring in Anthony Walker Jr. Some other guys, Carl Lawson. Maybe Tyler Eifert if Jared Cook does walk. If you don't feel comfortable starting Trautman year two, I'd be okay with Eifert coming in, providing a little spark here and there. So there's a lot of names on the free agent market. Of course, we know the Saints are going to be, contending for, like you said, the Yannick Ngakoues, the Allen Robinsons, the Dak Prescotts. It's going to be a bunch of budget veterans on basically little to no deal at all. But, we said the same thing last year. And the Saints brought in Malcolm Jenkins, Emmanuel Sanders, Jameis Winston. So we'll see what happens. It should be really interesting throughout this offseason for sure.
Yeah, and it's just tough because I would love that. And I did love when they signed Malcolm Jenkins last year. And I loved it more when he started playing because, just having that fiery competitiveness back onto the field like that was just fantastic to see. Man, it's just going to be tough to find the cap space to sign any significant player like that. So, it's just, but Mickey Loomis we trust. So,
yeah, this is true. So, with that said, we'll take a quick break. Coming up next, we'll get into some of the top prospects who could fall to the Saints at 28 in the 21 NFL Draft. Daniel will talk about those guys coming up next. All right, guys, welcome back to I almost said the name of my radio show. Whoops.
Whoopsie.
You go. Plug it in there. Welcome back to Full Press Saints. Alec and Dane here. So the Saints picking 28th this year in the NFL Draft. Talked to Kevin Turner about that in the last episode about who are some names he likes. But I want to get your opinion, Dane, because you're kind of the big draft guy out of the two of us.
Sure.
So, who are some guys you think, and you're going to write a great piece on it coming up. So, who are some guys you think do make a lot of sense at 28 in this draft?
It's always tough for the Saints because they always like to either trade up or do some sort of trade. Lately, besides last year, well, even last year they did trade up, but in the first round, usually the Saints do like to trade up, but they stayed put last season, last draft, and they ended up going with, of course, Cesar Ruiz. So I'm hoping the Saints stay at 28 or possibly even move back just to gain some more draft capital. But there's multiple guys I like at 28. Right now I'm working on an article highlighting my 5 favorite. As of right now, of course, the list changes all the time. But of course, there's Mac Jones. If the Saints quarterback situation is just a total question mark, going with somebody like Mac Jones at 28, if he falls that far, he could be a guy who's drafted 15th overall by the Patriots. He could be a guy who ends up getting jumped, or a team that jumps the Saints and ends up drafting him, in the early to mid 20s. But of course, Alabama quarterback just won a championship with the team.
Could be a top 10 pick. Who knows?
Could be a top 10 pick. Yeah, that's the thing. Because the quarterback is so top heavy this season, like it is a lot of the time. But, sometimes you just don't get this many first round prospects. But you have, of course, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance. Those, I think, are the consensus top 4 guys who are going to most likely all go in the top 10, at least top 15. So that could open the door for Mac Jones to fall a little bit. But I wouldn't even be upset if the Saints traded up for him because he has fantastic deep ball and intermediate field pass accuracy. He just has this great touch on the ball where it's able to find the exact spot it needs to be for his receiver to get it and nobody else. And that's something the Saints have not been able to see for a while, especially down the field. And he's not a very mobile guy, but he's your prototype quarterback body, IQ, and deep ball accuracy. So I would love to see Mac Jones under center for the Saints. And if we're talking wide receiver, there's a lot of wide receiver options this draft. I think the Saints could definitely wait to draft them in the mid rounds. But if you want to go with the first round guy, Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. He's been compared to the likes of Kenny Galladay and Allen Robinson due to his possession catches, due to the way that he is able to win contested catches over and over again. He's 6'2", which is just about the same size as Michael Thomas. So I think that he would be a nice X receiver. Opposite of Michael Thomas. He's almost like a Michael Thomas clone. He's able to get in the middle of the field, out routes as well, possession of the ball, yards after catch. I think that he would be a really nice guy, especially if we're bringing in a younger quarterback who can just catch the ball and make a play for the quarterback and get them some confidence, which is exactly what Michael Thomas does, play in and play out. So I would really like Bateman. I think Bateman is – I really like Rondale Moore out of Purdue.
That's
there at 28. But, I mean – I like Deontay Harris a lot, and Rondale Moore reminds me. He's a kick return specialist as well. We kind of already have that in Deontay Harris, so I'd rather get some big body receiver there at 28 than Moore. But Moore is going to be. I think that he's going to be if he's able to stay healthy throughout his NFL career. I think that he is going to make big splashes on whatever team ends up drafting him. So we'll see. But I really like Rondale Moore there at 28. I also like former. Speaking of wide receivers, former Saints wide receiver Joe Horn has a son in this draft. He's a quarterback out of South Carolina, J.C. Horn. I don't think he's going to fall to 28, but if a lot of offensive linemen, a lot of wide receivers are drafted ahead of the Saints at 28, there is a chance that J.C. Horn drops down to 28. We've seen crazier things. Remember, Greedy Williams was projected to be a top 20 pick in the NFL draft a couple seasons ago. He fell all the way to the second round. Somebody like J.C. Horn, that could definitely happen. We even saw DK Metcalf fall to did he fall to the third round? I think it was either later second. I think it was like 60, late second. So J.C. Horn could fall. Patrick Surtain out of Alabama and Caleb Fairley out of Virginia Tech. They're both going to be ahead of J.C. Horn in most teams' draft board. So there's a chance that he could fall. I've started watching tape on him, actually diving into it, but he is just he could definitely be a really nice option opposite of Marshawn Lattimore if we end up cutting Jack Rabbit and Norris Jenkins. Christian Barmore is another product out of Alabama. I really like the Saints to look at 28, but he's also another guy who could be gone. But, anything can happen in these drafts. He's a defensive tackle out of Alabama, big guy, but also savvy. He's quick on his feet. He's got nice footwork for how young he is. So, and of course, that's going to be a need if Sheldon Rankins ends up leaving the team. And then Joe Trion, he is a product out of the University of Washington, which is only a few hours away from where I live. He's an he's an outside linebacker and edge combo guy, which is good for the Saints because if they lose out on Anzalone and Trey Hendrickson, I think Joe Tryon would be a guy who can fill the shoes. Now, he right now is he has a second round grade by a lot of prospects, I have them as a second round grade, but once you get to the 28, you can kind of, if the BPA is really not in your wheelhouse, you can definitely go with your personal BPA for position of need. And I think Joe Trion there, especially if a lot of linebackers have already been picked, I think that Trion is going to be there. Big guy, he's got power moves. He also has some finesse moves, but overall, the power that you see from Trey Hendrickson can definitely be had there by Trion. So I like those 5 guys there. Of course, there's a few others that I like, but those are going to be the 5 featured in my upcoming article. So
there we go.
But there's a lot of options for the Saints at 28. Trade back, trade up. Draft whatever position you can think of other than offensive line, the Saints could consider there at 28, I think, for sure. Safety as well, so. I
think this draft is going to be super crazy.
Yes, I hope so.
Especially with no combine, you only have the pro days to go off on these players. It's going to be interesting. I think the 2 guys I'll bring up really quick, and these are the same 2 guys that Kevin Turner mentioned in the last episode, that I think make a lot of sense. If the Saints were just to let Marcus Williams walk, I think the perfect replacement would be Trevor Mooring, the safety from TCU.
Yes.
He is basically a Marcus Williams clone in a sense. I think another guy, if the Saints were to cut Janoris Jenkins and just bank on a rookie at 28, I think one guy that makes a lot of sense to me is Tyson Campbell, the corner from Georgia.
He's solid as well. Yeah. There's this cornerback draft is deeper than it's been in a while, a little bit. So yeah.
So I think
they could also get a guy like Greg Newsome in the mid rounds. I think that he could fall. He's a small school guy. I like him a lot too. There's a lot of options. Yeah, I and that's the thing. The Saints only have 5 draft picks in this draft right now. Yeah. I don't think that's enough. I think you either got to trade back some of your drafts to get some capital. Or trade some players to get some draft capital. I mean, one or the other. So,
yeah, it's going to be a very interesting offseason nonetheless for the Saints. Dane, before we sign off here today, any last remarks? Any last words?
Well, I'm happy to be back on the podcast. I'm glad everybody's doing safe and good now that the snow has kind of melted away fully for the most part. At least in the places where it became scary situations, but
not the people in California or Florida.
Not the people, exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
They're just chilling. They're thinking, what the hell are these guys talking about snow? But
yeah.
If you were in Texas or in the Portland area, you guys know what we're talking about. So, we're gonna have a lot of stuff coming out this week. We'll have some more articles dropping. Dayton is going to begin his top 5 prospect series on what the Saints could do at 28, highlighting some of the players that could go at 28. I'll continue my free agency series. Start off with the offensive line and receivers this week. So that's going to be lots of fun to talk about and write about for you guys to read. Of course, follow us on Twitter at SaintsFPC. We're going to have a lot more podcasts coming out this week as well. Try to get some special guests. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter for those updates. Having said that, everybody be safe, be well. And we'll see you guys until then.